Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your off-season edition of the Hurricane Outlook and discussion for February the 2nd, Friday, Groundhog Day. Happy Friday to you. Let's take a look at the Southern Oscillation Index, the SOI. We finished January 8.93, quite a rise from the negative 2.6 from December. However, lately we've had a negative SOI taking shape, and I believe that February is going to end up pretty much in the negative phase. We usually get these westerly wind bursts, this sort of beginning of the pattern changes in February. We've seen that the last several years, and we're going to really start to reduce the levels of this La Nina. But as of late, at least through the end of January, a pretty good rise, and the 30-day average still 7.36, and the 90-day is still close to 5, but these last few days it's taken a hit. What does that mean? Well, it basically means that the pressure pattern across the tropical Pacific is changing subtly, ever so slightly. It takes time. But you look at the subsurface here, and boy, you can notice that the La Nina has been chipped away, and you got a lot of areas of this warm subsurface coming in, but nothing overwhelming. So we're leaning more and more towards this neutral phase of the ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. I don't see any signs that an El Nino is coming. The La Nina itself is dwindling away, and as such, the surface temperatures here, the anomalies will start to respond in that we will see a moderation through this area, less blues. They'll start to just sort of fade out and return to more neutral conditions, maybe even slightly warmer than neutral, but again, no overwhelming signals that an El Nino is coming. But this time of year, it's impossible to know if that's going to happen or not. But typically, we don't go from a moderate La Nina to an El Nino right after the La Nina happens. You usually have a year or two of a transition into neutral, and so that's what I would expect to happen. Logic would dictate that, but we shall see. In the North Atlantic, things are still warm sea surface temperature-wise, but overall, sort of a moderation here as well. That the very warm Atlantic has kind of changed a little bit. We've been in a strong, what we call positive NAO, or North Atlantic Oscillation, with strong high pressure out over the subtropical Atlantic, and that has led to stronger than average trade winds out here for the most part. A lot of mixing going on, pretty stormy across the western Atlantic, and so everything's been sort of churned up and mixed more so than we saw in the previous, let's say, 8 to 10 weeks. And as such, I mean, look around Florida, all the water temperature is below the long-term average, but you know that by the time we get to August, for example, that water temperatures, wherever they are in terms of above or below average, will be warm enough for hurricanes to form. But what we're looking for now is the change versus normal and where that is occurring. And so at least as we get into February, still colder than average in the Pacific, and overall the North Atlantic especially warmer than it should be. And 4 months from the hurricane season, that would be favorable. So we'll just have to see if that hangs on. All right, so today, this is such nonsense that, of course, the groundhog saw his shadow, because what is that right there behind the groundhog? It's a light. It's a powerful outdoor light, and he's backlit, Puxatawny Phil, and of course he saw his shadow. You know, I'm just making fun of it. It's funny. A lot of people get into this. It is what it is. 6 more weeks of winter. Well, I guess so, because winter goes through until March, and, you know, it's like March 20th, 21st or whatever is the first day of spring. So we, you know, technically have more than 6 weeks of winter, don't we? Anyhow, fun. The other Phil Klotzbach, Dr. Phil Klotzbach, I should have pulled his picture up. You know, he's going to be in South Padre Island in April, unleashing his first quantitative forecast for the hurricane season. Unleashing, that's a good way to put it. So I guess if he sees his shadow outside of the Hilton Garden Inn in South Padre Island, we'll have 6 more hurricanes. Haha. I have to see what he thinks about that. Nevertheless, we look at this, and then we look at the 500 millibar pattern, and we say, okay, Groundhog, you say there's a lot more winter ahead. Well, what does the upper level chart look like? This is the 500 millibar pattern. And as we started off, troughing locked in the east, the polar vortex sitting up here, and it just kind of churns around doing its thing, sending these lobes of energy down into the lower 48, but nothing that catches my eye as being particularly fierce. And you can see these little spokes of energy come down. There's one right there, rotates through, and then moves on offshore. And the polar vortex up here just vortexing around, and another piece of energy comes in right there. That's about almost a week out. But nothing catches your eye as digging down and then closing off into a monster storm along the East Coast. Everything's progressive, and it moves along. That's why they call it progressive, right? So, unsettled with these pieces of energy that come down, a few storm systems from time to time, maybe some rain and snow for parts of the South and the Mid-Atlantic, but no giant storm yet, like we saw at the beginning of January with that very big storm that started the year off. I don't see anything like that coming up. That doesn't mean it won't happen, but we're not seeing it. And if we just go and we look at the beginning and then the last frame here a week out, at least a week from today, maybe some more zonal flow across the lower 48 here, at least a good deal of it. And what does that mean? Well, quite frankly, if the air is kind of cut off from coming out of Canada, you can see how it comes down and then banks right, then everything south of this line for the most part is west to east, so your air mass is originating from the Pacific or out west instead of the Northwest Territories of Canada or the North Pole or Siberia or whatever, cross-polar flow. We had one big winter storm, and if that's all we have, which I doubt that's what will happen, that's fine with me. I'm ready for spring and summer, the convective season, so to speak, and then, of course, hurricane season will be here before we know it. Less than 4 months to go, and, we're just coming off one heck of a season. Speaking of that, quick little update here on what's happening with my documentary. I'm about 2/3 of the way through, so my target of early March to make it available is still on. I'm just wrapping up Irma, and then I'll have a little bit to say about Jose and Maria. I personally, nor anybody on my team, was in the worst parts of Jose or Maria, but it did skirt the Outer Banks of North Carolina with some effects. I'll show that. Then, of course, we have Nate, which was our very successful overall storm or hurricane landfall with lots of data. And, of course, we launched the weather balloon in the eye of Nate, and I want to be showing that and talking about all of that. So everything's going nicely. Some new music that I have composed and produced on the synthesizers here to sort of help make everything a little bit more dramatic, I guess. That's what movie music's for. And it's moving along. I'm happy with it. Probably going to be a little over 2 hours in length. And it'll be ready in early March. So stay tuned. I'm going to do another little teaser clip probably early next week, midweek, something like that, from Irma. Again, just a little teaser to keep people excited about it coming out. And I'm excited about it. I think it's a neat look back at what we did, and it puts the whole season in context in terms of how big it really was. So chipping away at that little by little each day. It's tough. Not complaining, just telling you like it is, to edit all of the stuff, all the pictures, all the video, try to tell the story, get all the transitions in there, the audio levels. If you know video editing, and this is a full-length documentary, it's not just highlights, here's all these crazy shots of all the wind and everything. I mean, anybody can do that. I'm trying to put together what would be like a full-length movie, and it takes time. So I can't wait myself. It's going to be good. Looking forward to it. All right, I'm done for now. That's it. Have a good weekend ahead. Groundhog or no groundhog, it's still winter. We'll be on the lookout for any fierce winter storms. So far, none to be found over the next several days, but we shall see what we shall see. Enjoy the Super Bowl this weekend, whoever you're rooting for. Pretty much it's all of America against the Patriots, I guess is what people say. We shall see. I'll talk to you next week. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. We'll talk again early next week.